We thank you, most holy God, on the eve of your holy day, Sabbath. And we thank you for this blessing you've given us. We pray that we merit your love and your patience with us. We also ask for your holy presence, Lord, in our proceedings here. And we ask that you bless us with understanding, that we may be a light unto others. And we thank you and we praise you, Lord. And we pray all this in your holy and mighty name, in the name of Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Amen. So happy Sabbath to some of you. Some of us will be there soon. We're going to continue the document that we started on Wednesday on DeSantis. Was there somebody here tonight that wasn't here on Wednesday? I'll put the link in here too. For the I did email the link out. Okay, so I'll go ahead and pull it up. Let me mark my spot so that I can just kind of remember the title if we could. This is a Time magazine we can see. And yeah, it doesn't have the title up there. So hang on one second. We'll make everybody dizzy. Sorry. We got a little ways, I think, to go on it. It was kind of a long one, but I don't remember how far we got. Called the DeSantis Project. Did everybody have a chance to read the article that Elder Parminder posted on DeSantis? Anybody not read it?
Yeah, no, I haven't read it.
You haven't read it? Okay.
No, I have not read it.
He posted like 3 of them recently. Which one?
Yeah, only one on DeSantis though, right?
Oh, okay. This one, right.
Yeah, there was quite a few articles
Okay.
in the last couple days, and I was caught up, and then there was a few more today on racism in America. Okay, so yeah, the one that he shared. Let me see if I can remember the title of it. I don't think you can see my WhatsApp thread, right? You still see the DeSantis article.
Correct. We just see the DeSantis article.
Okay. The one that I didn't read yet was the one on Clarence Thomas. Trying to go back to the DeSantis, 4 takeaways from Ron DeSantis 2024 launch. So that was what that one was about in there. So I just thought, it was something to think about since we're having the discussion. Should we know who it is? We know it's going to be Republican. Should we know Trump or should we know? Then I just wanted to know anybody's thoughts on an article being posted on DeSantis. It didn't sound real positive for DeSantis, and but I think it was yesterday when I read it. So it seems like there was a part towards the end that may have given a little bit of hope for DeSantis. So, but that doesn't mean anything. We need to go by prophecy and understand prophetically who it's going to be. So this article was, I don't want to make us all dizzy and roll back up to the beginning again, but it was, I want to say maybe May 18th, I can't remember, but it was before, just before, it was this month, just before though, the Twitter thing that he did and announcing he's running. So we're looking at, and I think we're getting into some of the really bad stuff as we've gone through the article. There's quite a bit, but it gets worse. But on DeSantis, what I do remember from reading it is he had these 2, I don't remember what they called them, advisors, but that helped him get elected, and he basically brushed them aside once he was elected. And does anybody remember anything else that they want to share with this article? Anybody?
Are we gonna keep reading that from where we left off?
Yeah, we are. And this
Okay.
is where we left off. I just wanted to know if anybody had anything to add to some of the, points that we've already read.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And nobody's jumping up and screaming to talk. Okay. So this goes into a racial issue. If anybody's reading it, I'll read a little bit here. In the general election, DeSantis faced Andrew Gillum, the progressive Black mayor of Tallahassee. This is for the governor. We saw that he's 44 years old as of the time of this writing, that he started out with a congressional spot. We saw that they used the word insurgent on him, which somebody help me with the definition of it. I want to say aggressive. I don't know if that was the right word that was used. I don't think rebel was the right word. Anybody remember rebel? Okay, rebel. She said rebel. Okay. So and he was in tune to the new, I'm going to say flavor because I don't remember the word, the new trend, flavor, whatever, of the Republican Party. We saw that as being going back to 2012 was when he first ran for a congressional spot. I might have the date wrong. Rebel or revolutionary, thank you. But that was coming out of, we know that Elder Test marks the transition from neocons to paleocons at 2009. You have in 2008, you have the Tea Party rising up. And so there's this change happening in the Republican Party. And he's aware of that and part of that movement, that whole movement. And so he rides that into getting, and then he has the help of those two, I don't remember the word for it, consultants, maybe it was consultants, but they helped him get elected, but he opted to push them aside once he did get elected. So, okay, so in the general election, DeSantis faced Andrew Gillum. This is the, for governor now, the progressive Black mayor of Tallahassee. In an early post-primary appearance, DeSantis said, "The last thing we need to do is to monkey this up by trying to embrace a socialist agenda." What's the matter with that sentence? With what he said?
Well, just a use of the word monkey. Because Andrew Gillum was a Black progressive mayor. And when you say monkey, that's a term for someone who's Black.
Right. So we see racism, and then the Democrats decried his verbiage, his wording, his choice of words as a racist dog whistle. DeSantis refused to back down or apologize, but while many national observers remember that controversy in Florida, the campaign mostly focused on state issues. What Ron said to me in 2018 when we were laying out the strategy was, we're going to nationalize the primary and localize the general. So the primary election would nationalize it, and the general election in the primaries, he'd nationalize it, and in general, he's going to localize it. This is Gates, if that's how you say his name, Matt Gates tells me. The plan was to run against Putnam on national issues and then paint Gillum as in the pocket of Big Sugar. So Gillum, a progressive Black mayor, so he's a Democrat. This is the general election. The plan was to run against Putnam on national issues, and then paint Gillum as in the pocket of big sugar. In a good year for Democrats, DeSantis defeated Gillum by less than half a percentage point. And sugar is one of their big crops, if I understand it correctly. Susan said, yeah, it's like Reagan, who claimed he wasn't racist, but used racist terms, and he used the word monkey as well. So he wins by less than half a percentage point in 2018. Trump has claimed credit for DeSantis' rise, but one former DeSantis advisor says the governor sees his success as foreordained. So Trump claims success, but a former DeSantis advisor says that the governor, says Ron DeSantis, sees it as foreordained. He has a providential belief that he will talk sincerely about. He believes he is exactly where God planned him to be at all times, the advisor says. I'm sure he believes, quote, it was nice of Trump to help me kick out of Adam Putnam, but it would have happened anyways. So he believes it would have won anyways. Big sugar is a collective term for the major sugar farming contenders in the Everglades agricultural area, including large operations such as U.S. Sugar Corp, is that FlowSun, and Florida Crystals. Thank you. So I think that comes up here a little bit more in the article as well. The Florida governorship has not always been a powerful position. Until 1968, the governor could serve only one term. This I thought was really interesting. This goes into what some of the things that he has changed to suit himself, to benefit himself. Okay, so the Florida governorship has not always been a powerful position. Until 1968, the governor could only serve one term. And until the 1990s, the governor, but they put in quotations here, Florida has only had male governors. So they refer to he as the governor because governors have only ever been male. Shared decision-making powers with 6 other statewide elected officials. That's until the 1990s. So there were decision-making powers is shared with 6 other elected officials. Reforms that took effect during Jeb Bush's tenure in the early 2000s shrank the elected cabinet to just 3 members, while also giving the executive more say in judicial nominations. So what do we see happening there in that? It's a process, and what do we see happening? Anybody? What's happening with what would be called the executive branch?
So the executive branch is gaining in power, and they're also trying to take over the judiciary.
Yeah. So they're slowly shifting the balance of power to the executive branch. That's what you, I think, said, David, right? That's what I understand it to be.
Yes.
What'd she say? I keep forgetting when you speak, you're speaking from Florida. First experience.
Oh yeah, it's cuckoo here.
So at the same time, term limits approved by voters in 1992 in the 1992 ballot initiative took hold, turning the legislature into a revolving door where lawmakers could no longer amass power over decades. As DeSantis entered office in 2019, the power of Florida's executive was already at a historic high. So the executive branch in 2019, by that time, is at a historic high. He was determined to use every bit of it. One of my first orders of business after getting elected was to have my transition team amass an exhaustive list of all the constitutional, statutory, and customary powers of the governor. he writes in The Courage to Be Free, I wanted to be sure that I was using every lever available to advance our priorities. Aides from the time have corroborated this account, describing a thick binder of information that DeSantis proceeded to devour. Conscious of his narrow victory, DeSantis initially sought to broaden his appeal. We got elected by the hair of our chinny chin chin, so the goal of the transition was to grow the universe of DeSantis supporters in the state of Florida and do better with non-white voters, independents, suburban women, and young people, says Gates, who chaired the transition to the governorship. Once an ally of both men, Trump and DeSantis, Gates has grown distant with DeSantis since endorsing Trump's 2024 campaign. DeSantis approved the sale of smokable medical marijuana. These are some things that are kind of surprising to me with there was a few things, and I think I don't remember what the other one was before some of this, the school vouchers, some things that he did that seemed like on the surface, but there's a motive behind it. And you explained the vouchers. I think it was Susan the other night that I understood that better, their purpose in the vouchers. So it wasn't trying to be, but this here, when he approves the sale of smokable medical marijuana, appointed Democrats to prominent posts in the administration, raised teacher pay, and proposed record levels of environmental funding for the Everglades. He posthumously exonerated the Groveland Four, black men wrongly accused of raping a white woman in 1949. When his proclamation honoring the 3rd anniversary of the massacre at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando was criticized for failing to mention the affected groups, DeSantis' office reissued it with a new sentence decrying hatred towards the LGBTQ and Hispanic communities. So I'd like to hear some thoughts and comments on this list of things that he's done.
I'm sorry. I kind of wanted to go back only because I had to step away, but I was listening with my AirPod. And it's just a quick remark. It just struck with me the foreordained part, where he felt like he was foreordained, because you know how I can't remember the name of the movie that was on topic, Elaine, about Bannon, and how Bannon felt that it was his, when destiny. I think he's purpose and all of that, but Bannon didn't have the religious connotation in his. But DeSantis does, because that word, unless that's just the way the author that's writing this has chosen to put it, but not really, because it goes on to say that he has a providential belief. So that foreordained, if you look it up, because I wanted to check myself, but when I looked it up, it's Calvinism, and that sort of reminded me of all those papers that we were reading, right? About, wasn't it Calvinism? Help me, my memories.
Yeah, that believed in.
Yeah, wasn't it?
Yeah, not pre what
Predestination.
Yeah, predestination.
Predestination. Thank you.
But wasn't it that religion that seems like we did a lot of reading on the different religions?
Yes, trace back to
and how Calvinism. They manifested, huh?
Yes, everything traced back to Calvinism when it came to the religious aspect of everything we were studying. Yes.
Yes. Okay, so I thought that was kind of an interesting point. And then on the paragraph you're on, I that the one not that you're showing now, not the one I had you go back to, but the one that you questioned everybody on with all the list of things.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah, and I was kind of puzzled by that also, because it seems like it's against his character. doesn't it? That he would allow marijuana, or that he would appoint Democrats to posts, or that he would raise the pay, right? Knowing anyway, or the environmental funding, because these guys don't care about any of this, or exonerating the black men, right? But then the last part, I wasn't able to hear it clear enough, but the last part sounded like it flipped the coin. Let's see, DeSantis office reissued it with a new sentence decrying hatred towards the LGBT. Okay, so right, the last one kind of is just the opposite of the list previous, right? Is that correct?
Say that again?
Okay, so the last thing, the hatred towards the LGBT, that's his MO. The other things aren't his MO, right?
Well, I was going to ask about that, the way that's worded, because if you go back and read the whole thing, it says, when his proclamation honoring the 3rd anniversary of the massacre at Pulse nightclub was criticized, when his proclamation honoring it was criticized for failing to mention the affected groups, his office reissued it, proclamation, with a new sentence decrying hatred towards the LGBTQ and Hispanic communities. Does that mean, I'm having a hard time figuring out
He
which way that goes.
flipped. I think he flipped when he was criticized. But what struck me was he wanted to build support. It's kind of like deceitful,
Yes,
in a way. Is what I can't explain it, but what I'm trying to say is that all these things that he did that are kind of not who we know he is, right? The medical marijuana, the Democrats, the
right.
raising of the teacher pay, and okay, kind of like to gather in people, right? And once he's got the power, then well, of course, too, when people criticize him, he flips. So I don't know. It's kind of a hard one to read.
Well, I'm still
But
on,
it seems like,
I still want to,
go ahead,
I
Elaine.
still want other people's thoughts on this, which way this means, because when you say he flipped, I'm trying to make sure that what does decrying this hatred towards the LGBT and Hispanic communities mean? Does that mean that he's criticized for not noticing them? Is he now criticizing those who hate? Or is he standing on the side of
That's
who?
what it sounds like. Okay, I got to look the word up, decry.
So decry is to publicly denounce.
There you go, publicly denounce. Okay, so he's publicly denouncing hatred. So he's basically showing that he's against people that are hateful towards LGBT and Hispanic communities, correct?
He's a liar.
Yeah, he's done a 180 on the whole list.
He's a
Right.
liar, like Trump.
Yeah, yeah. So each one of those things, yeah, that part we got. I just wanted to make sure of what he was saying in this particular sentence, because it's consistent with all the other things. He's completely lying in each one of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I got that he was on the other ones. I just wanted to make sure I understood that sentence right, that I wasn't reading it wrong, that he's actually basically taking a stand against those that hate the LGBT and Hispanic communities. And we know that's not who.
And when was this? When was this in context? That he,
it was
wasn't
3 years
2024,
after,
was it? No, that's
years-
ahead. Sorry.
the 3rd anniversary of the massacre at the Pulse nightclub. When was the Pulse nightclub shooting?
Okay, not too long ago. That feels like it was only 3 or 4 years ago.
So it's amazing he can make such a statement and make it look like and make it look like and sound like he is.
In Orlando, Florida, and began shooting.
Say that again?
Sorry, it's in 2016, June 12th.
Okay, 2016.
That's a long time ago.
So yeah, third
2016.
anniversary will be 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is in its first term.
Yeah, and I think that we read that back here somewhere is 2019.
Well, it all makes sense when he's trying to, court more people back in his first term because he only won
Yeah.
by less than half a point. So he's doing all these things, lying through his teeth, and
Right.
then he wins pretty big in this next one. But I was listening to some radio commentary today, local stuff, and almost unanimously, the people were saying he does not have the support that he thinks he does in the state because of what he's been doing, and on both sides of the aisles. And it's just kind of interesting. The comments they were talking about is he's not well favored as much as the media and everybody seems to be putting out.
Yeah, I like that.
That's kind of scary too. Sorry, Jackie. I was
that's
just
all right.
gonna
No,
quickly
trying to
say
get my
to David's
screens around here.
comment.
yeah, David's too, because I was reading an article on DeSantis's wife, Casey, I think her name is, and correct me, David, if I'm wrong on that. She is very instrumental in some of the agenda that he's involved with. And her dream is to copy Jackie Kennedy, although they were liberals, Democrats, and he's a conservative. But they're bolstering her up because she's the key to a lot of his agenda. And this was on the New York Times, this article. It'd be worth reading it too. I didn't get through the whole thing. It's not a very long article, but the first few, maybe 3 or 4 paragraphs are leading into how instrumental she is with her influence on him and how she's looking at how this presidency is going to look like. So I'm looking at that with eyes open, not just on DeSantis, but on his wife, who's a key player in this.
She would be
from this article.
She would be different than I don't know if the right word is aloof, Melania Trump.
Oh, she's not aloof. She is somewhat in the background, at least right now, but she's being primed to sort of to copy Melania, her style, her dress, everything.
What you said about her desires to be a Jackie Kennedy.
Yeah.
It's when I look at the internal and the external, that you have people that aspire to be somebody, and you have people that just want to aspire to be able to help people.
Right. Yeah, there's a big difference.
So this is a big list of things that he's completely not even for, and yet look what he did.
Yeah, I might say. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying it is very deceitful.
Yeah.
Depending on what Mary said too, deceitful.
She is a breast cancer survivor, and she's very outspoken on this subject. And I wonder if that's connected with medical marijuana or some of these other thoughts here with, DeSantis being for. And yeah, she's got a lot of persuasion there just because of what she's been through.
Susan,
with the breast cancer.
Susan, were you finished?
Well, I just wanted to make a brief comment about what David said about the media promoting him, because we know how the media is so complicit. And then along with what Jackie's saying, it's like they're building the you know how they do for movie stars and things. They build an image. They're branding them. They're building an image and preparing, and the media can be very persuasive, and making it seem just like that town hall meeting that Trump had, where no one was allowed to boo, right? They could only applaud, and the cameras only showed what Trump wanted them to show, right? That people were for him and all of that. So they've really masterminded a way to present something, a picture for the public that's viewing, to buy into some of that stuff. You know what I'm trying to say? That's very powerful. So that was all.
I think what CNN did to allow him to control how that went, to me, it shows, we see it in many different areas, the direction that CNN is going, but there was no transparency there. It's, I don't know if that's the right word to use. There's no transparency when Trump calls the shots and controls everything. Then you're only going to get Trump's skewed, deceptive, lack of the right words to use, his what he wants to present. And the behind the scenes, I didn't hear that other than from you, so you must have read it, that they didn't allow the booing. I do remember reading that the audience was, he was involved in who was allowed in there. But to me, it's like CNN really sank on that one.
Yeah, they sold out.
Very much so.
And think of that. That's kind of like what DeSantis did. It's deceitful because CNN was trusted for a lot of people. You know what I mean? It was a trusted news site. So it's like these corporations, they're in it for something else, you know, they're in it for the big bucks, and they don't care about the way that they're portraying these, you know, they don't care. They've lost their, you know, they've sold out. So
yeah. And I think in this article, we'll see where weakness, when the weakness with DeSantis that's pointed out is he doesn't like interaction with the media, where on the national stage, it would be more required of him. It'll talk about that. So early on, though, there were hints of a more assertive approach. DeSantis short-circuited the usual process for state Supreme Court nominations, allowing him to cement a conservative majority that would be unlikely to overturn his policies, as previous courts had done to his predecessors. He used a new aggressive interpretation of his powers under state law to remove local elected officials. So remember, he wanted to go back and read. The first thing he wanted to do was go and read what powers he had, and how he was going to go about doing things. He wanted to know and use every lever of the power that he had. So he used a new aggressive interpretation of his powers under state law to remove local elected officials. And I was thinking about with the, was it in South Carolina where you had the 3 members that were silenced, and the 2 African-American men were actually
Tennessee,
thank you. And they wanted to remove them. So you have that going on, talking back and forth about threatening and wanting to remove members, elected officials. And there's times where it seems you can see where it's absolutely necessary. like perhaps in the case of George Santos. And then you see the right wanting to toss around throwing elected officials out that are on the left that are actually doing the right things. So anyway, so DeSantis used a new aggressive interpretation of his powers under state law to remove local elected officials, including Scott Israel, the Broward County Sheriff, whose response to the Parkland school shooting drew criticism. Previous governors had reserved that right for officials who broke the law, and a state Senate special master recommended that Israel be reinstated, but DeSantis pushed through the removal. DeSantis' support for Everglades funding may have been less about the environment than getting back at the powerful sugar industry. So back where we read, that was one of the things that his environmental issues that seemed to be favoring climate change issues. It was, according to this, more about getting back at the powerful sugar industry, whose generous subsidies he had opposed since his days in Congress, and which had spent more than $10 million backing Putnam in the primary. So the sugar industry backed Putnam in the primary. So you can see him using his powers to set things up for him. Sugar is more powerful than Disney here by far, and he took them on unapologetically, says Nick Arossi, a Tallahassee lobbyist and DeSantis ally.
Elaine,
Yeah,
he's making a push nationally
yes,
to build up his war chest for the campaign that he's going to undertake, which is the presidential campaign. He has to amass a giant war chest, and part of that is image, and he has to bolster his image to look like a strong man, because you look at his rival in the Republican Party, and it's Trump. And if he doesn't look bigger and tougher and meaner and savvier, he won't get the contributors that contribute to the GOP
right.
and contribute to him. And so he's doing a push to bolster up this image that he's throwing out there, that he will represent the white nationalists who make up the bulk of the GOP.
I think this article actually goes into a little bit of the money that has.
Right, and it's most of it is posturing. Whether he believes it or not, it's not important. I'm sure he's gotten a research company to tell him how to do the presidential thing. You have to take steps, and the war chest is the number one thing, but you also have to look presidential. You have to look strong. You have to look intelligent, and whatever the list is that he's going for. And that's what I see by him doing all this stuff.
And since the Republicans seem to like a bully,
Yeah.
you back down, the more strongman you are, the better.
Plus, too, he's always in the media, and that's free publicity for him. And so his name is on the tongue of every other American in this country, whether it's good or bad. But it's still DeSantis on your tongue, kind of thing. And so he's running for that presidential nomination by the GOP, from what I see. Whether he gets it we'll have to see.
Yeah, that's a interesting point that Francisco made about how DeSantis is even using bad publicity. And I think there's a saying, something like there's no such thing as bad publicity because it's all publicity. I don't know the exact saying, but it's a famous saying. They use it like in, like a lot of people catapulted to stardom with bad publicity. The more they were talked about, the more they were on people's, tongues. It didn't hurt them. It actually elevated and made them a rising star. And then when you were mentioning about the war chest, I was thinking about something I saw, where he speaks from his war room. It's called, his war room. And of course, he's on Fox all the time. And he says that the woke mind virus is basically a form of cultural Marxism, right? He claims that this wokeness is an attack on truth. And because it's a war on truth, he says he thinks we have no choice but to wage a war on woke. So he's really coming out like an authoritarian, kind of a hint of Goebbels, Joseph Goebbels, and, these people have gone too far, so we have to do something about these people. Our society has tolerated these people for too long, and so now we have to take action. So he is really beating the war drums, and like you said, strong man, like a Mussolini, the same kind of thing. Yep.
So did you guys get this in your news over there about the travel advisory for Florida?
Yes,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean you guys, you people.
yeah,
That down here is playing big because there's businesses down here, and it's all a backlash that's going on with him, with DeSantis, because he's trying to erase the Black history in the schools, and all the inclusion things that are going on. And it's a civil rights organization, is the latest to caution travelers against visiting Florida. The League of United Latin American Citizens and LGBT advocacy groups are against all this. It's starting to kind of boomerang on him here, because this is about money. You saw that they're already pulled out a whole bunch of money. Disney did billions, but they're not going to put in here. Now they get this travel advisory going. It's not going good for businesses here. And they were talking on this radio station saying, hey, we don't want to be in politics. We just want to be left alone and let, people do what they want to do and keep our businesses going. But it's squashing some things because of this. Well, it's a backlash, this travel advisory thing from the NAACP. Anyways.
thank you for that. Yeah, I did. I did hear that. There was a couple, it was against African American and also, a warning for, and also LGBTQ, wasn't it? Wasn't there 2 warnings?
Yeah, it was
for
both of
Florida?
them, plus the Latin Americans,
Okay,
which is a big group down here in Florida. And here we go. We got the holiday coming, and a lot of people like to flood into the state and everything like that. Like, it's one of the biggest. Orlando is like one of the biggest attractions for people to travel to this weekend. And travel advisory's got these people a little bit kind of teed off. That is DeSantis's group.
yeah. And when, and Susan just posted that quote in there, and I do remember that. I wasn't thinking about it when you said it, but I do remember it being from P.T. Barnum when you said that. And I don't remember where I saw it, but didn't it have to do with some bad things that happened in the circus? But the bad publicity was still publicity, something like that. Okay, so, but it was the pandemic critics and supporters agree that changed DeSantis. After initially shuttering schools and restaurants, DeSantis grew frustrated by the lack of clear guidance from Washington and the medical establishment. I remember Florida opening up those beaches for spring break, and what a disaster. He was frustrated by the lack of clear guidance from Washington and the medical establishment. He began doing his own research and soon concluded that much of the early conventional wisdom about COVID-19 was wrong. The spread of the virus could be mitigated, but not contained, he believed. Democratic Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York was being hailed by the media for his strong leadership, even as he sent infected elderly people back to nursing homes, an act of tragic malfeasance intended to prevent a hospital bed shortage that never materialized. Studying the emerging medical data, DeSantis concluded such fears were based on faulty models, and he almost certainly saved lives by isolating elderly patients. He soon reopened Florida's beaches, schools, and businesses while prioritizing protections, vaccines, and treatments for the most vulnerable citizens. Gates, who talked to DeSantis daily during this period, says the governor often brought up the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, in which people were wheeled onto beaches for sunlight and ventilation. He fretted about the long-term mental health effects of shutting people indoors and became emotional, describing nursing homes residents dying in isolation, prohibited from seeing their loved ones. My dad spent his last 8-9 months in a nursing home without visitors. I'm sure that others have such stories too, but I knew that it was for the safety of all. And we were thankfully able to talk to him on a very regular basis. So DeSantis had surveyed the landscape, watched a stampede of governors go one way, and determined he would do the opposite. It was very binary, Gates recalls. One group was going to be toast, the other was going to be vindicated. The crisis hit right after the 2020 legislative session had concluded. Rather than call back the frightened lawmakers to address it, DeSantis seized new powers for himself. Declaring a state of emergency, he claimed unfettered authority to allocate pandemic funds from the federal government. He overrode local governments and school boards that tried to impose closures or mask mandates, and threatened to remove or withhold pay from local officials who sought further restrictions. Once receptive to input from outside his orbit, he became convinced of his own rightness. COVID was definitely the switch that flipped when he started to become a bully, says Nikki Fried, who served at the time as agricultural commissioner, the only Democrat elected statewide alongside DeSantis. Having initially welcomed her outreach, she says, during COVID-19, he stopped returning her calls. Fried, who now chairs the state Democrat Party, began calling DeSantis a dictator. So COVID is when he started to become a bully, according to her. At a dinner in Austin in January 2021, Rossi introduced DeSantis to Elon Musk. The two men proceeded to discuss disease vectors and biotherapies in obsessive detail. DeSantis, quote, was getting the kicked out of him on CNN, Rossi recalls, and he said to me, Nick, I don't care what they say about me. I don't care what they say about me now. I care what they say 6 months from now. I've done the research and I think I'm right. At the time, loosening restrictions seemed like a risk, but DeSantis' confidence was unshakable. Quote, everyone's in hysteria, thinking the world is going to end. All his advisors are telling him not to, but business thrived, the economy thrived, people moved here. It took a year, not 6 months, but he was right. Was he? As Trump left office and the pandemic waned, the governor grew more emboldened. In 2021 and 2022, the legislature pushed through DeSantis-backed bills to make it harder to vote, ban vaccine passports, crack down on rioting at protests. The Parental Rights and Education Bill, better known as Don't Say Gay, prohibited the teaching of sex and gender in early elementary grades, while the Stop Woke Act banned the teaching of critical race theory at schools and businesses. DeSantis signed a 15-week abortion ban contingent on the yet to come reversal of Roe v. Wade. So he did that in advance of Roe v. Wade, and began to express skepticism about the COVID-19 vaccines, appointing a new state surgeon general, Joseph Ladapo, who opposed vaccine and mask mandates while promoting unproven treatments. Favor trading was not DeSantis' style. Loyalty was not necessarily returned. At the end of one legislative session, he proceeded to theoretically, is that theoretic? Is that what that, I think it is. Or is it theatrically? Theatrically, yeah, thank you. Susan said I was thinking that too about conspiracy theories when it said he did his own research, yeah. So favor trading was not DeSantis' style. Loyalty was not necessarily returned. At the end of one legislative session, he proceeded to theatrically veto budget priorities of the legislative leaders standing alongside him on stage. When it came to redraw the state's congressional districts in 2022, legislatures proposed a new map that largely preserved the delegation's balance. A voter-approved constitutional amendment prohibited partisan gerrymandering and sought to protect minority districts, and lawmakers were wary of being slapped down, by the courts if they went too far. But DeSantis had read the relevant laws in precedents, and in January 2022, he proposed his own map, which eliminated a majority Black district in North Florida and gave the GOP a shot at up to 4 additional seats in Congress. And it sounds like he got away with it. None too keen on this attempt to usurp their traditional responsibility, legislatures ignored DeSantis and passed their own map instead. Let's see, none too keen on this attempt to usurp their traditional responsibility. Legislatures, okay, ignored DeSantis and passed their own map instead. DeSantis vetoed it. At the same time, he let it be known that Senate President Wilton Simpson, who was running for agricultural commissioner, might not get his endorsement if he didn't go along. Finally, the legislature relented and passed DeSantis' map. A few days later, DeSantis endorsed Simpson, and another Republican candidate who had been running for the post dropped out. The map, which governed the 2022 election, still faces court challenges. So he did still push it through. And he bullies people until they support him, or he gets rid of them if they don't. Sounds really a whole lot like Trump. The redistricting fight was pure DeSantis. He did that single-handedly. Nobody pushed him, and he was relentless. One current GOP lawmaker told me. Brian Ballard, a powerhouse lobbyist in Tallahassee and DC, and an ally of both Trump and DeSantis, says the gambit cemented his dominance. The state Senate didn't lay down for him at first, but he showed he was able to use his political popularity in a way that previous governors had not, and it's brought him incredible power. DeSantis Chief of Staff James Othmeyer says he has never seen a policymaker so hands-on. He sits and talks through the nitty-gritty of policy and the budget, says Othmeyer, who previously served as a senior official in Trump's Commerce Department. He's ingrained in the process in a way I haven't seen working in the Trump administration or with other public officials. With polls showing DeSantis' approval ratings among Florida Republicans in the 90s, he moved to spend his skyrocketing political capital. Traditionally, the state Senate caucus had recruited candidates for office and funded their campaigns, but DeSantis had other ideas. In state house races in the Tampa and Jacksonville areas, he announced his own handpicked candidates prompting those backed by the Senate to drop out. Republicans who went against him drew complaints from their constituents. In the 2022 election cycle, several Florida political consultants told me their research found DeSantis' endorsement to be the single most important attribute for GOP primary voters. Quoting, in 2020, every member in a strong Republican seat campaigned with a picture of Donald Trump, says GOP State Representative McFarland. In 2022, they campaigned with a picture of Ron DeSantis. His political aims didn't stop at the State House. In another unprecedented move, he issued a raft down ticket endorsement. He issued a raft of down ticket endorsements as well, working with the conservative parents' rights group, Moms for Liberty. He backed slates of school board challengers in districts across the state, targeting boards that had tried to impose school closures and mask mandates during the pandemic. It's kind of interesting because the pandemic, among other things, but the pandemic, the anti-vaxxers, the anti-masks, all that really showed you who they were and what side they were on. I don't know if that made sense, but it gave a visual, an external visual, among other things. But it seems like the pandemic was maybe prominent in making the visibility. Does that make sense? Creating the visibility?
Yes.
So let's see. He moved to fill the state bureaucracy with the like-minded, stacking traditionally nonpartisan university and hospital boards with right-wing warriors like the anti-critical race theory activist Christopher Rufo. When a locally elected Democratic prosecutor announced he would not enforce DeSantis' abortion and transgender policies, DeSantis removed him based on his own reading of the relevant statutes. A court ruled that the rights of the prosecutor had been violated, but that his dismissal could stand. So you don't like what you get out of him, you remove him. So the Democratic prosecutor is not going to enforce DeSantis' abortion and transgender policies, and DeSantis removes him. DeSantis and his aides went to war with the press, ignoring media requests or publicizing inquiries they considered off base on Twitter, urging fans to swarm and harass reporters. At press conferences, he delights in berating members of the corporate media, often challenging the premise of their questions and accusing them of bias. He scrupulously avoids the mainstream media, once theatrically turning down an invitation to appear on The View. This year, DeSantis' proposal to make it easier to sue media outlets for libel was one of a handful of initiatives the legislature balked at. DeSantis staff did not respond to multiple requests to interview him for this article. At the same time, DeSantis carefully tends his image in conservative media. He appears frequently on Fox News, once granting the channel exclusive rights to cover a bill signing, and doles out interviews and exclusives to right-wing influencers and publications. A pair of local digital outlets, Florida's Voice and Florida Standard, popped up shortly after DeSantis was elected, helmed by writers with backgrounds in conservative activism. Their funding sources are unknown, but with DeSantis' help, they frequently break news about the governor, forcing the rest of the press corps to follow their lead. The strategy has made him a household name to the national GOP base, and he attracts large crowds at appearances across the country.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
I'm not sure, it went back to a kind of a theme, but there was a law in this state that if you're the governor and you ran for president, you had to give up your governorship. Well, he just decided that he was going to get rid of that law. And because there's a supermajority, GOP, lo and behold, there's no longer a law that says if you're the governor and you run for president, you have to stop being governor. So he can continue to be governor and run for president. I mean, if all of us could just take the laws that, you know, didn't sit with us right. And I mean, I don't get it. I truly, honestly do not understand. I just don't understand this. I don't understand how he won. He won like it was a 19 point. I don't know what with the 19 point, how they did it,
Yeah.
but he won like majorly in his, you know, second run for governor. And, you know, I don't know that the population of this state increased. Did I say this already to you? I said it to somebody, one of the groups, I think, I don't know, but the population of this state last year, we moved there this year, but last year increased the size of the whole population of the state of Arkansas. Now, granted, Arkansas is very rural and not very populated, but it went down and listed, and it was in the newspaper, like 10 states where the influx of people into this state was greater than the population, the full
Of
state
Arkansas.
of Arkansas and other ones. But Arkansas was the closest to, as far as the number of people that came in. And then it listed, I mean, I'd ignored it when I saw Arkansas. I was like, oh my goodness. And then it just went down a list of states where, you know, the population was even less than what in the amount of people that influxed this state. And let me tell you, like we could see it, we could feel it. And I'm asking God, why are we here? But so I don't know when he was elected into the governorship for the second time. I have to look. David keeps saying November of last year. So
Yeah, 2022, yeah.
okay, so then how many of those people and that great influx, that's what I've been contemplating and thinking upon, voted for him? Because what David's hearing on the NPR radio about these people who are actually, they were from the town we're in, Largo, that were like, no way, he doesn't have the support that the media is playing up. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but he had enough support to flip the county that we live in, which has always been a blue county, and now it's red, and I'm just like mind boggled.
Well, you can see part of that was the gerrymandering of the map as well. And
true. Well, yeah, okay, I didn't even think of that. But other than the sad thing, the very sad thing is I have a first cousin once removed. I figured out she's not my second cousin, but anyways, she's a representative in the House here in Florida. She's a Republican. And it's like my sister's liberal. She's, you know, Democrat. And she's like, no, she's just a rhino, you know, Republican name only. I'm like, then why isn't she a Democrat, you know? And it just makes me sick that I actually have a member of my family who's sitting in there and participating in all this nonsense that he's doing. And, you know, I don't know how she votes on matters. I guess there's a way you can look those things up. I don't know. But it's very disturbing to me to have a family member supporting this anyways. But yeah, he changed the law so that he could continue his governorship while he runs for president.
I'm pretty sure that's covered in this article too.
Yeah, and the thing is, people are always, they're like, oh, DeSantis is going to run. Well, we all knew, because why else would he be getting rid of that law?
Right. I
You
think
know,
this article, because you and or Gloria mentioned it last week.
okay.
And then I read this article after, I think it was on the Sabbath. You or Gloria, or both of you, talked about it. And then I read this article, I think on Sabbath after we were all done. And I'm pretty sure it's in this article where it talks about how I went about that. But then I know I read somewhere too that it's like 1,200 people a day is what they're saying are going into moving to Florida.
I don't know.
But it's been over 3 million that moved in here last year.
David said it's been over 3 million that's moved here in the last year.
That's a lot. Wow. Okay.
So, yeah, and let me tell you, it's crazy. It's just crazy, the building going on. I mean, every space, I mean, this is just in our little corner of Florida. It's, well, because we're near the beach too. So, this, any piece of land they can build on, they're building, high-rise apartments and stuff so they can fit more people in here. And, I mean, we've even noticed it because our little beach that we go to, we avoid the one I grew up going to, because it's a big Clearwater Beach. You talk about the pandemic, they did close Clearwater Beach the first spring break. And I think then after that, that's when DeSantis said, no, we're not going to do this. But that was a big outcry, but they showed people at the beach anyways, and they were supposed to be like groups of 10 or less type of thing. There were massive amounts of, young people just, going across the lines because they had it taped off to not, you couldn't go to the beach and all that. And it was just, we weren't living here then. I was just watching it from afar. But yeah, but anyways, we're close to that beach, but the little beach farther south, it's crowded now. It used to be a little haven to get away from the crowd, and even it's crowded now. It's not as crowded as Clearwater Beach is a much bigger beach, much more beachy, sandy space and all this, where we go as a narrow sandy beach. But excuse me, you just go down there early in the morning if you want to avoid crowds. And yeah, it's depressing to me because I wanted my little beach back. Anyways, going on, but yeah, I'm sick that I'm living in this state where this man is. It sickens me. And
well, Arkansas didn't get left any better. Isn't that where Sarah Huckabee went?
Well, yeah, no kidding. At least what's his name before Asa Hutchinson, at least he was more moderate, for sure. But yeah, I don't know what but Arkansas is a whole different it's whole different thing. I can't explain it. You just have to live there. It's a beautiful place, but you just have to live there. I don't know.
Well, it's definitely going to get a lot darker.
Yeah, well,
before the sun rises.
Please, I can't tell. I really like.
I know it's hard.
I can't. It's like, one of the Jeopardy clues, because I've become a Jeopardy. I watched Jeopardy with my mom, and it had something to do about diamond, and I can't remember how it was, but the answer was adamant, and I'm like, that's right from the Bible, and that was reminded me we had to have the forehead
of
flint, but there was adamant not adamant. It's what's the word?
I know what you're talking about, and I can't think of the word either.
Because I'm saying adamant means you're like, about something. But anyways, add something, but isn't that in the same passage as the forehead of flint?
It might be in Ellen White's writings, but I can't think of what it says either. Maybe somebody else remembers the word.
Anyway, but that just reminded me when I saw that, it's like, that's where we have to be. We really have to concentrate. Adamant. Thank you, Susan. Yeah, we really have to fortify our minds and take this seriously, because like you said, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we can conjecture, nobody thought Trump would win the first time. And if everybody's saying DeSantis, this time, and he's going to be way worse than Trump, because like David said, he has the smarts to go with it, where Trump didn't have the brains to, he didn't have politics in his repertoire. But I mean, he just, I can't even stand to look at his face, hear his voice. It's like, I'm like,
read on.
Yeah, read on, David says. Okay, I'll be quiet.
Well, I was just going to bring up while you talk about that, when we look at how that it's going to get darker before the dawn. When you look at the if anybody's read the articles that we talked earlier about, the media broadcast articles that have been shared on women's health care and the abortion issue, and how that is, trying to think of a word, it kind of makes me think of the floodgates on that one, that the floodgates are open that totally are going to go against women's just, I think they use the term standard of care. So doctors they have their hands tied in some of these states, and even in states that do allow abortion, they're trying to twist things to where they can tie their hands as well. And it's pretty vicious, and the things that women are having to experience is horrific. And there was one big long file that he posted. It was more like a I don't remember what you would call it, a journal. I don't know what you would call it, but an academia type document. I don't know the right word to use. It wasn't a regular, like a news article, but it was, and it was citing the many cases of women that doctors had to turn away, and what all has transpired because of it. And like when a woman comes in, one came in with her, did it say the placenta? Something was actually,
Yeah, the placenta had ruptured, and she was like 16 weeks pregnant, and it's like, and she's hemorrhaging, and there's no way the baby is going to be able to develop without a placenta. And these women are stuck. I didn't read because that's like, isn't that the 40-page?
I think it was 26 pages or something, and I didn't get through all of it, but I went through,
I didn't
went through about half of it, and it was multiple stories. And where they're told to, one woman was told to go sit in the parking lot until
until she's about
worse.
dead.
Yeah. And and their hands are tied.
Yeah.
And we see what is happening to the doctor that did the abortion. And that 10-year-old girl was, I think they said she was 6 weeks and 3 days pregnant. At the time of Roe v. Wade.
Yeah. There was a where is the hypocritical? Yeah. Well, it's a Hippocratic oath, it is hypocritical now, but it's Hippocratic oath. There was what were we listening to today, honey? It was on NPR, because that's what or maybe it was NBC News. And they did a whole big thing about that case. There was one journalist that was a media broadcast thing. Oh, okay. It was something in the media broadcast. It was like a 30-minute audio
Yes.
thing?
Yes,
Yeah, did you listen to that?
probably which one do you talk, because I listened to all that was there this morning. I just don't know which one you're talking about.
Well, the one where it was about the 10-year-old and that.
Oh, yes,
only
okay, yeah, I listened to that.
And one journalist was, had done this research, and dug through, this is what I heard. And I, this is my words on it, that like dug through all this stuff and realized there was a case of a 10-year-old, raped.
Right,
And so she shows up in the courtroom expecting journalists everywhere, and she's the only journalist. And then the whole story that goes along with that case. I was doing this and that because, anyways, just because. So I wasn't, excuse me, as intently listening to it, but just the thing that the court case wasn't even like known until this woman like brings it out. And it's like they were keeping it all covered up, so that nobody would know. And then they want to get this doctor because she speaks publicly. She never gave a name. She never, okay, so identifier, a 10-year-old from Ohio. So by then it was big news that this 10-year-old from Ohio, was pregnant from a rape. So, but nobody knows the child's name or any of that stuff. And who's to say? We didn't know. It didn't say in the audio, or whether they're, if the parents gave permission, for this doctor to speak out. But they didn't get her for everything. They only fined her $3,000. They didn't take her license away, and there was one other charge they were trying to they had against her, whoever they were. And that's what I couldn't remember, who actually brought the case against this doctor. But good on her. I just say good on her. She just got fined $3,000, and probably, that's not a big, worry for her.
but it's enough to make others take notice and be afraid.
Yeah, I get it. And, and then she's now, of course, targeted for sure.
So this,
by,
to me, after reading the articles that were shared in there today, and a couple others that I found online as well, it's to me, I look at abortion just being, if you had an octopus, abortion is the head, and all these tentacles are going out there, and how it's going to affect women's health care overall, which is really amazing, because they're anti-abortion because they want to be pro-family, but they're causing a situation where who's going to take the risk to even get pregnant?
well, exactly. Because the horrible story about the woman who was made to, was told that her child would not live.
And had to carry the term and deliver it, and died 99 minutes.
Yeah.
Milo. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like that, David said that was a crime. And it's just that it is. This is family. This is trauma. This little boy, this family has a son who was waiting for his baby brother. And he's 4 years old, and they're trying to explain why the baby brother didn't come home, and and the crazy thing was, like, if you read it, the baby should have come out all deformed, but the baby came out perfect looking, perfectly developed. You couldn't tell that it didn't have the kidneys, externally looked fine. And it's just, it's heartbreaking, Susan. I think a broken heart there, because this is just heartbreaking.
And the expense as well that they put upon people when it comes to what would have been a simple take the pills or a simple abortion, turns into major medical expense, major surgeries, major infections. It's devastating.
And if the baby comes out alive, and thankfully, that they gave this family that their baby lived 99 minutes, the option of, intervention, and they chose not to. But what if somebody does choose intervention? I mean, think about that. And I mean, these preemies or these babies with congenital, chromosomal defects where they're not going to live, but yet money and, the whole stuff is expended on them knowing they're going to die. And the cost of all that is just ridiculous. And I mean, these people aren't thinking. Here's my take on wokeism, especially for these Christians. And I wish I could get to DeSantis and that he would read something that I would write to him, because I want to tell him about wokeism, because it's like, if you're not woke, you're asleep. And if you know your Bible, Mr. DeSantis, you know that the sleeping virgins do not make it to heaven. It's the woke ones that will make it. I mean, that has just been where my mind has been. I want it because it's the Christians. And I said it to one, or I posted it somewhere, I can't remember. I've made the statement once. It's like, if you're not woke, you're asleep, and you're a sleeping virgin, and you will not make it. So, make your choice. And I think I'm thinking, what an apropos term they chose to use for the liberals.
Yeah.
That we are awake, and I think that was a God thing, for maybe some of us to, anyway, just some thoughts. And it's late here, but I had a medical issue, and so it's keeping us up late. So anyway,
I'm sorry for that.
well, I was glad. I said, well, we can, because we missed Vespers, because we only do Vespers on the east of the Rockies every other week, and we missed it because I had to go to urgent care. And so I said, we got home just before 9 o'clock. I said, well, perfect. We'll just tune into California. I don't want to hog the whole time. Anyways, that's all.
Here's one of the quotes I just posted in here from one of the articles. Indeed, states with abortion bans saw a larger decline in medical school seniors applying for residency in 2023 compared with states without bans, according to a study from the Association of American Medical Colleges. So there's less that are doing residencies and wanting to remain in those states. While applications for OBGYN residencies were down nationwide, the decrease in states with complete abortion bans was more than twice as large as those with no restrictions. That means fewer doctors to perform critical preventive care like pap smears and screenings for sexually transmitted infections, which can lead to infertility.
Yep, there you have it.
So I mean, it's an explosion of what's going to come upon women's health care.
Yeah. I mean, if we weren't already behind the 8 ball when it comes to that, that's just.
And when doctors can't make decisions of what is best for the patient winds up in worse condition, but perhaps in times dying. And you guys see him, and perhaps dying, but suffering loss, like a loss of a miscarriage or an abortion because of something gone wrong is one thing, but to have to carry that child and go through all that, the ones that have to listen to all the people saying, oh, you're pregnant when you do, and all that other stuff, then the expense and the trauma and the funerals, it's horrific.
Yeah, but they're going to be blind. They're going to be blind because they're asleep. And thanks, Troy, for the encouragement. He won't listen. I agree. He won't listen. He won't hear. He won't see.
He won't, no, they
No,
won't.
he
They
won't.
can't. You look at the agricultural model, they can't. Their
I know.
hearts are hardened.
See, we know this, and see, the thing is, we sit here and discuss it, and I get so I just so frustrated that I just get so frustrated to hear about DeSantis and anything. It's like, I don't want to hear any more about him because, you know, we know this is prophecy. We know that this has to happen, and just God help us. Just God help us to get through it. I mean, I just, I mean, I'm more and more, it's just the realization is like, this is serious, serious times. And if we don't have it together, which I'm telling you, I don't have it together. And I need prayer because I don't have it together. And it's not as far as the message goes. It's as far as, you know, my relationship with God. So I need prayer because I'm angry at God. And
Hold on to God's love regardless in faith.
I know everybody
Faith.
tell us faith, faith, faith. And it's, I
Yeah.
read little, you know, all I ever read of a Bible verse is on a flip calendar, you know, and I've got 3 of them. One's really one about praying for your children, but they'll have Bible verses. Some of days it'll just be a Bible verse. And I've had other people tell me faith, and it's like, do I have faith?
But yeah.
I mean, this is something completely off topic, so we don't have to go there. I don't want to, you know, it's something we can talk about privately. But
Okay.
I just, yeah, it's really a time to be, our faith to be strong, because, you know, Satan, you know, if he could, would deceive the very elect.
Yeah.
And, you know, I believe that we are the very elect. And so, yeah, these are difficult times. And, you know, I had my massage therapist invite me to go to church with her on Sunday. And it's like, no, that's okay, thank you. But she's like, I just want to let you know the option's open there, and you can come, you know, with me. And no, I'm, you know, thank you. You know, I can't explain. You know, it's like, how do you explain? Like, no. And, you know, anyway, the one thing I miss of all of this is I miss church. I miss going to church and being with people every Sabbath. And I think, and I don't know, you know, anyways, this is off subject, but that's the big thing here. It's just, well, anywhere, you know, there's not, where is it that there are groups meeting? And we were encouraged in Arkansas. We were not encouraged, we were actually told by Elder Parminder that we were to meet together. And they wouldn't do it. They were just afraid of COVID. It passed, well past, you know, the you know, the height of COVID. And I don't know who's on here from, I think Troy, and then, gee, I don't know who's on here. I'm trying to look, but it doesn't matter. I don't think there's anybody else here. Yeah, Gloria's not here, but we it was a meeting specifically with the Arkansas group, and then look what's happened. There's very few left. One family still trying to, I don't understand why, I thought their house was sold, but I don't know. And then that leaves just Bob and Penny and who come on here, but and Alyssa doesn't come on, but that leaves Bob and Penny with her mom and aunt who has Alzheimer's, and then Alyssa, who is actually she's legally blind, and she finally is going to the school of the blind. I don't know the story because I haven't talked to her to find out, but that's in Little Rock, so that's 2 hours away from Bob and Penny. That's it. That's left of the group that came out of the shaking, the two shakings here. We had the the big 2019 shaking, and then there was a one after that. Well, it was probably still in 2019, but at the end of 2019. So anyway, for all intents and purposes, we have to have so anyways,
Let's see
yeah.
let's see if we can finish this article. And
Yeah, I'm sorry to take up all the
no,
time.
it's okay. It's okay. There's a lot going on. It's a lot going on, and you're definitely
Holding on the
all
road.
the time too. So, but we'll try. I don't know if I don't remember how far long we got on this, but we've got like 20 minutes or so. Let's try to finish it anyways, so we can move on to the abortion issues as well. So, okay, I helped get sidetracked, Kathy, with that. I helped you get sidetracked onto the abortion issue instead of DeSantis, but he's good at what they're doing. So, okay, so DeSantis policies drew the notice of other red state governors across the country who began to see Florida as a laboratory for conservative policy. A raft of states have introduced legislation mirroring "Don't Say Gay," and many have followed his lead with bans on transgender athletes and CRT, critical race theory. His battle with Disney has galvanized a national GOP war on woke business practices like environmental, social, and governance, ESG investing. DeSantis donor retreats in Fort Lauderdale last July and Palm Beach in February were styled as policy conferences with attendees including GOP governors. He was not the first Republican governor to transport border crossing migrants to liberal cities, a gambit the Trump administration had considered but rejected as too extreme. But by flying them to Martha's Vineyard, he managed to up the ante. What DeSantis has done, which his predecessors did not do, is exploit all the power inherent in the office of governor, says Max Stipanovich, a longtime GOP lobbyist and operative in Tallahassee, who left the party after Trump's election. Just because you have the right to do something doesn't make it right, and his predecessors were conscious of that. There were guardrails, but if he has the right, he doesn't hesitate. The voters like a strong man. As a popular governor with a weak Democratic opponent, DeSantis was virtually guaranteed to win re-election in 2022, but he craved something bigger. There's the war chest. With a war chest of more than $100 million, he instructed his campaign that he wanted to run on his record. Ad makers were told to focus on his policies, even the ones that didn't poll well in isolation. The campaign ultimately produced some 70 different commercials, each looking backward at the accomplishments of DeSantis' first term. Not a single ad focused on his promises for the future. So they can see what he's done, but they can't see where he's going, or they're not shown where he's going. DeSantis took the resulting landslide as vindication. If past editions of the legislature tended to do DeSantis' bidding, this year's session, with a GOP supermajority in both the State House and the Senate, stacked with newcomers he handpicked, was engineered to do his will. DeSantis passed down a list of more than 40 legislative priorities and pushed the lawmakers to get started early. Twice before the official March kickoff, he called special sessions to knock out priorities that would have waited, like insurance reform. Tallahassee observers believe the flurry was choreographed to tee up the launch of a presidential bid that will place his policy record at its center. But unlike the legislative session, the pre-campaign has not gone according to plan. DeSantis stumbled on foreign affairs out of the gate, drawing harsh criticism for a statement that described Russia's invasion of Ukraine as a, quote, territorial dispute. Trump has savaged him in personal terms. Some Republicans worry that DeSantis' rush to the right on issues like abortion may come back to bite him. Even allies wonder if DeSantis is cut out for the intense human interaction required in a national campaign. An April trip to DC to meet with his former colleagues in Congress ended disastrously, producing a flood of anecdotes about his antisocial ways on Capitol Hill and a slew of new congressional endorsements for Trump. The same bunker mentality that has made DeSantis more feared than loved, enabling him to shut out distractions and dismiss the naysayers, has created an insular operation struggling to do the outreach a presidential campaign requires. His stiff arming of mainstream media has made it difficult to regain control of the narrative, and Trump's political rise would seem to show that policy, substance, and governing experience may not count for much in today's GOP. Trump's political rise would seem to show that policy, substance, and governing experience may not count for much in today's GOP. But those who have a front row seat to DeSantis' transformation of his state know better than to underestimate him. In his presidential run, allies say, will draw on his Florida record to argue he is both more effective and more electable than Trump. To GOP partisans hungry for confrontation but wary of losing, he offers Trumpian aggressiveness without all the baggage. What got him here isn't personality. It isn't glad handing, says Iorossi. It's the relentless pursuit of conservative policies that have made Floridians' lives better and led to a majority of registered Republicans. It's the result of policies and governing. So that closes this article. I thought this was the one, but maybe it's another one that talked about his leaving, what he did to be able to, what he changed in order to be able to run for governor run for president while being governor. Okay, so any comments? We can definitely see he's one bad person in all of this. I think it depends on how conservative policies make lives better. It depends on whose lives they're making better.
I think it's gonna be a test for DeSantis. He has the I don't know how you would say it, have a thick skin and not take things personally. Because from what I've heard, he has a temper, and he can't show that if he's at a debate and stuff. I mean, you can get a little bit mad or whatever, but you can't look out of control or anything like that, because then people will think you're a nut and a hot head and all that good stuff.
Yeah, he's pretty brutal from what we've read. So tomorrow, go ahead. Somebody gonna say something?
Okay, yeah, I'm getting distracted by my husband. Okay, Francisco just said something that triggered me and now I lost it. Shoot. Francisco, can you repeat some what you just said? Or
Yeah, I was just saying that he's a hothead, so he has this tendency to lash out at people.
yeah,
He kind of gotta put a lid on that when he's like at a national debate or something like that.
Well,
Or-
that made me think of how how did he announce his presidency? Did he announce it in front of, you know, a large audience? Not at all. He hid behind social media so that he couldn't get any questioning of any reporters, you know, and it was the wimp's way out. And you know, the technical difficulties, I didn't tune into it personally because I'm not going to listen to that junk. I just can't stand. And then Elon Musk just gets under my skin too. But yeah, he hid behind the social media so he wouldn't have to face the people. And I don't know how is it going to play out when he's got to actually face the music. You know, how will he react during, you know, debates or, you know, just questions from the media. That's, yeah, you're right. And he's for now, he got away with a little bit, but it's not, you know, once this stuff gets heated up, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't like to talk under pressure. And he definitely likes to control the environment that he's appearing in.
Yeah.
So that says a lot about him right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been said, particularly, I don't know if it's been particularly or just in Florida on the news, but that, you know, he's not he's not the people man. He's not out there. He tried it a little bit, I think, just the other day, but, you know, shaking the hands and kissing the babies and, you know, that kind of stuff. That is not him at all. He is just standoffish, you know, keeping away from the masses. You can't do that. That's just, well, maybe you can, but that's just not the way politics has been played. You're out there meeting those people who you want to vote for you instead of, you know, like I said, hiding behind Elon Musk and his crumbling social media platform. And yeah, and just, you know, I don't understand why he doesn't have the personality. And then here's the other thing that kills me. This is just a personal thing. He grew up in the town next to where I grew up. Okay. It's actually in the town where my relative grew up, and her mother still lives there, and sister in the same house in that town, Dunedin. And I'm just like, he's from Dunedin? That even makes me more sick. Why wasn't he from Miami or someplace far away from me? But he's from, oh, it just is too much for me. I still like, God, why did you bring us back here? Why? But I know why. I know many reasons why. I just want to see the big picture. Anyway.
Yeah, we got a bit of this journey still to go.
Yeah.
And and it's going to be really bad. We're seeing the agitation. Maybe what we should do in the morning is first start with a little bit of review on the board of the lines. And where does the agitation fall and what is that agitation, and just discuss it because we're seeing it, we're living through it. And list some of the things, because we also need to go through, I want to go through some of the Portugal classes on the wheat and the tares as well. So yeah, let's try, everybody be thinking about that for tomorrow, and start the morning off with a little bit of review on the lines and look at where the agitation is and what it is. So
speaking about agitation, on Finn, Tamina has a new one out. Well, actually, it's a continuation of what an Adventist is. You know, she asked a question maybe a month or two ago. She has a series, what is an Adventist? And the most recent one, she talks about agitation.
Good. Maybe I'll look that when we're done here tonight. Because we're living in it, that's for sure.
Yes.
And we can
have,
see the handwriting on the wall.
right. And agitation, it's way before. We have to be able to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you like, is Logina there with you? Would she like to close in prayer?
Sure, I can. Heavenly God, as we spent this time before the start of the Sabbath, Lord, to again review all that is going on in the midst of this time. And then you ask us to be watchful, be ready, and be willing to learn and to gather the information and to sift the information. We thank you for those who have been here. Pray for each and every one of the families represented. We pray with those who were not able to join us this evening. We pray that tomorrow, as we start the Sabbath, to again gain more knowledge and faith in the things to come. As we part ways, we ask that you bless each and every one of us, grant us all a good, restful night, and gather us once again tomorrow. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.